and see the folks. So I went up to the Bronx and I walk in the house and they had frankfurters in the oven. And the whole house, I mean, smelled like the inside of a hot dog, you know? And I walked in the door, took one breath, it was horrible. Oh boy. So, you know, of course, they didn't know how to understand this. They didn't know how to take it. They took it as a personal insult. Yeah, this is how people are. When they're impure, they can't see that they're impure because they have nothing to compare it with. So when then somebody comes who is a little bit pure and goes, oh, you know, ooh, you know, they have to take it as an insult in order to justify their state of impurity. Because if they were to take it seriously, like, oh, gee, we've committed an offense, we did something wrong, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, then they would have to get pure themselves. They don't want to do that. They want to enjoy, you know. This is the same uncle I told you about who drove a milk wagon when he was a kid, and he worked his whole life for the same company, doing the same job, delivering milk. And then when he retired, I think he was like 65 or 62, my age. He was my age when he retired. He immediately got sick, and within a year he was dead. You know, poor guy. And he just worked himself completely out. He just, you know, didn't have any spiritual life, didn't have any kind of devotional or yogic practices. Just worked. Then, you know, as soon as he was done working, then that was it. He didn't have anything else to do in life. He had no other role in life to play. He had no other sense of identity other than, you know, the milkman. And so as soon as he retired, basically couldn't figure out what to do with himself and left his body. Bye-bye. So this is going on. And I think we'll see a lot of this in the coming years as, you know, as the economic meltdown proceeds, and that we see a lot of people losing their jobs, and we see society breaking down on a very large scale. We're going to see a lot of people who lose their position in life. You know, they have some identity based on their job or their position in the corporate structure or the government or something like that. And all that stuff is going to break down. And so they're not going to be, you know, the so-and-so, you know, Mr. Smith, you know, the president of CEO of X Corp, you know. Instead, they're just going to be Joe, you know. And they're going to be in the same boat as everybody else, not have any place to live or food or any, you know, it's going to be really rough. So what are they going to do? Well, historically, in times of great confusion and danger like this, what happens is that these people go into paralysis. They're like, what do we do now? Because they don't know who they are anymore. See, they lose their identity, just like my uncle. He retired from being the milkman. He had been the milkman his whole life, since he was like 16. And he didn't know what to do with himself. He didn't have any other identity. He didn't have any other reason to live than to get up in the morning and go deliver milk. So he didn't live. He died. That's, the fate of people who are in a crisis situation and they don't have an identity that allows them to deal with that crisis. They basically stop living. They're like paralyzed. They don't know what to do. They can't make any decision. So they do nothing. And of course, nothing is about the worst thing to do in any crisis. The Army officer's field manual states on the first page, you must have a plan. Even if it's a wrong plan, even if you have to change your plan later on, you must have a plan and you must take action. Otherwise, you're not going to survive. So we give the same advice. You must have a plan, and you must know who you are. You must know that you are a devotee of Kṛṣṇa. You must know that you're a spirit soul. You're an eternal being of pure consciousness. Otherwise, if your material situation changes radically, suddenly, how are you going to deal with it? You're going to be in psychological shock. And this is going to lead to paralysis, and paralysis leads to inaction, and inaction leads to death. Krishna says, action is better than inaction, for even a man of knowledge works according to his nature. So the question is not what to do. The question is how to engage what I'm doing in Krishna's service. And that's a big question called karma yoga, big subject called karma yoga that we've explored a little bit, by no means thoroughly. But you notice since we started talking about karma yoga, it's been almost a year now. We started talking about karma yoga. We started talking about the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad-gītā instead of the 2nd chapter. We spent like 3 years talking about the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad-gītā. And then finally, like, we had explored that whole subject very, very thoroughly, very exhaustively. Analyzed the whole system of consciousness and the science of the spirit soul and so many things. Then we started talking about the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad-gītā, and I guess we're maybe halfway through that. And you notice the whole tone of our community, the whole style of our group has changed since then. I don't know if you've noticed it. I sure have noticed it. That we have become a much more action-oriented, much more service-oriented group. We're much more focused on community building now than we were a year ago. It's not anymore about individual salvation. We can understand that the best chance we have of attaining individual salvation is in a community setting. A community where everybody is working together, everybody is helping each other, everyone is cooperating towards the same goal. So, for example, what happens when your devotional service becomes ripe and it's time to just sit down and chant for a year? Where are you going to get to do that unless you're in a devotional community? When you get to the part of the path where you just want to give everything up and go sit in the woods and chant. Just be left alone and just chant. Who is going to support you? Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to tolerate you doing that? Only devotees. Only devotees who understand what this is all about and who would like to get to that same place themselves. See? It's only possible unless you're in some very, very fortunate material situation. It's only possible in a community of devotees. Or what to speak of studying the scripture for hours a day, or chanting for hours a day, or having beautiful kirtans, beautiful deity worship. It's only possible in a community of devotees. Because it's only possible when people pool their resources to do these things very nicely. I may have a little, little altar set up in my home. I might have little small deities. But if 20 or 30 devotees get together and they make a temple, they can have really nice deities. Big, big deities with beautiful decorations. Same with kirtan. We've noticed that, you know, with two people, kirtan is like kind of, The 3 or 4 people, kirtan is like, okay. With 5 or 6 people, kirtan starts to get fun. With 10 people, oh, then it's great. With 20 people, it's ecstatic, you know. I was in a kirtan once in Jagannath Puri with, like, I don't know, about 1 million people. And there's no words to describe. We used to have these kirtans in Mayapur too, with like thousands of people. You know, the leaders are, there's like 4 or 5 leaders, and each one has a bullhorn. Right? And they stand together in a circle in all these different directions.